So the question is this actually going to make an immigration deal harder to pull off? The Fox News contributor Steve Cortes and Herald Group VP Sabrina Schaefer. Sabrina, let me start with you. Dick Durbin is saying that it wasn't the deal that they brought to the president that made things tough, but it's probably the language that he used that's going to make this thing impossible to pull off.
Well, from a public relations standpoint, it was not good. Look, I think that this leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. They would like to see that we secure our borders and that we do more to incentivize legal immigration, and this derailed that conversation. And instead, now we're talking about yet another instance when the president sort of, said something that's inflammatory and insulting and doesn't represent the views of most Republicans or Democrats.
Steve, as a Hispanic supporter of President Trump, you've had to engage in a lot of conversations, arguments, and debates, I'm sure. And now the plot thickens even more. You're going to have a tough weekend fielding these phone calls from your family and friends. What do you tell them?
Well, first of all, what I would tell them is I don't think they should be tough conversations because Hispanic unemployment is at an all-time low, and I do believe we're on the cusp of an historic immigration deal. We're going to finally get control of our immigration system and protect the DACA recipients as well. But toward these alleged remarks in this conversation, for one, I would say that was a private conversation, and I don't think any of us were living under the illusion that he talks like Mother Teresa in private meetings. And by the way, if you listen to tapes of presidents past, like LBJ, like Nixon, they had pretty tough mouths as well. So, and regarding the not just bad language potentially, but the substance of it, talking about how many countries in the world are basket cases, well, the harsh reality is they are, and it has nothing to do with color. I'd give you a white example, which is Belarus, a white country that's led by a tyrannical leader. Many leaders around the world steal the prosperity and the liberty of their citizens. Thankfully, we don't do that here, which is why so many people want to come here.
I get it, and presidents have behaved badly in the past, Sabrina. We know that, but we also know that the media continues to seize upon any opportunity that they have for President Trump, whether it's a tweet or perhaps a gaffe like this, to mitigate accomplishments, to derail his agenda, which I think is working phenomenally. We're looking at another record in the market, phenomenal numbers from retail sales over the holiday. I mean, it should all really be great news, and all Americans should feel good about it, but they don't right now.
Well, look, I mean, I think that language like this is part of the reason why they don't feel good about it. Look, you can have the greatest, policies in place, but if you don't lead, if you're not a leader, if you're not someone who inspires or makes people think that this is a welcoming country, I don't think that those policies matter so much. I think in the end, we need to be a country that invites people here.
With all due respect, if these comments were used in a private setting, to Steve's point, would you be surprised? Is there anyone who voted for President Trump that's surprised or shocked or upset about all the other things that are going on? I mean, does it really change the narrative? Because we knew the person in the White House before yesterday.
Right, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think that this is surprising, and in a way I'm surprised that it's getting so much attention for just that reason. But at the same time, these are important issues, and if we do want to move the ball forward and we do want to come to the table, and I think that there is room for agreement between Democrats and Republicans on immigration, this isn't helping things. And you would think at some point the White House would say enough is enough. So, we need to act like the White House.
Right. So, Steve, you're confident about this, but to Sabrina's point, how do you move the ball forward, particularly when you have these self-inflicted wounds?
Right. Well, look, the president, I think, showed great compassion in extending the DACA protections for 6 months and told the Congress, by the way, to do your job. So he's going to do this the right way, not like President Obama did, where he pretended he was a king and waved his scepter and did it by executive edict. That's not how our country works or our Constitution. So we're going to do it the right way. We are going to protect the DACA recipients because they're a different category of illegal immigrant. They did not choose to break our immigration laws. They were brought here as children. But in exchange, he needs to have more funding for the wall. It was a foundational promise of his campaign, perhaps the foundational promise of his campaign. And in addition to that, we need to end chain migration. We have to stop the insane visa lottery system. We need to do immigration better in this country. The president's already done a lot to get control of immigration and control of our southern border, but we need to finish the job.
Steve, Sabrina, stay with me. I want to turn to all this big economic news that's obviously right now being overshadowed by Trump's comments. Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, you're looking at it all at all-time highs again. This amid news of bonuses and wage hikes. Charlie Gasparino, did Trump, did he change the news cycle to the point where the mainstream media can now, they don't even have to even give it lip service. Before a moment, they would give it lip service, some of this good stuff. Now they seem like they don't even have to mention it at all.
Yeah, it's hard not to mention it, though, because it's so stark. I mean, listen, I think President Trump acts like an idiot sometimes. I mean, comments like that, that's not a private setting, by the way. You're in there with other congressmen. They're clearly, there's no Chatham House rules when you're in these conferences. It's not off the record. People can talk about it afterwards. So to think that it's private is absurd. Let me just make this.
But President Trump could have thought he was amongst a handful of people, and that was going to be.
If he thought that, then that's doubling down on idiocy. The problem with President Trump is this: policies real good. The man himself says dumb things, and he takes the emphasis off the very good policies. By the way, there is a legitimate debate, which I'm 100% in his corner for. How can you have open borders and a welfare state? How can you be bringing so many people from poor countries, I'm not going to use that other word, in here trying to integrate them in mass while you have a massive welfare state that costs people a lot of money? That is the debate. The minute you use a sort of inflammatory word like that,
how does that change the debate, though? How does that change the facts that you've laid out?
Well,
a single word that
Charles, look at the news.
Yeah, well,
I mean, why?
Hold on, we're not going to use the mainstream media though as a gauge for President Trump.
Hold it. Don't give them the rope to hang you with.
Steve, what do you make of that? President Trump, knowing the mainstream media, not his friend, why help them with their mission to derail his agenda and his legacy?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure he cares, number one. I would say, number two,
that's why he's got the mainstream media approval rating.
That the mainstream media very unwittingly actually very much helped Donald Trump win the presidency. I think they were so utterly unfair, so clearly biased.
Right. Well, they doubled down in their efforts to make up for that unwittingness, if you will. Sabrina, I know you want to chime in here. Please do so.
Yeah, well, I think, Charles, one of the things is it's not that he was talking about that these countries were so bad. It was the implication was that the people coming from countries with problems are inherently bad. And I can think of a lot of Western countries that have a lot of problems.
Is that your take on it? That's what you took away from it? Because I thought it was more like, hey, Haiti's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. They've got some issues that go back several, like a few decades. Right. I didn't think he was talking about the people per se, but that's the way you took it?
I certainly read it that way, and I think, look, I mean, I'm not a full libertarian when it comes to immigration. I do think we need to have some restrictions. I do think we should be able to pick and choose, so to speak, because we need to grow our economy. At the same time, I think we are a charitable country. I think that we are a country with open arms.
And the
idea that we talk that way about people who are coming from really difficult situations is just, it doesn't resonate with me.
And let's be real clear, the context of this. He was quoted as saying, it was probably a joke, but he still said it in a crass way about AIDS and Haiti. He said it.
Let me go to
you
real quick.
When you start doing that, it becomes personal more than the country's poor.
Steve, let me just go to you because AIDS is a major problem in a lot of countries. I guess you got to say things a certain way, but facts will never change. But having said that, do you believe this is one instance where President Trump should apologize?
No, I do not believe he should apologize. He didn't say anything racist. This is Sabrina, this is your interpretation, or this is the mainstream media's interpretation, that if he says something negative about Haiti, it's automatically racist. That's simply not true. And by the way, I don't think he's talking about the people from those countries. I think he's talking about the leadership of those countries.
Well, here's the thing, guys.
Far too many of these countries.
The gist of this segment was
we need to spell these things out.
Steve, it's not racist, but it's absolutely stupid.
And let me just say the gist of this conversation was President Trump detracting from all the great economic stuff, and the fact that we spent so much time on whether it was racist or not probably proves that yes, the answer is yes.